about the inauguration, but I mean, I tell you what, dull. Who cares?
It's all going to get duller from here, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean it is, and to be quite honest, America, it's not their country. They go on about their country. They go on about God. Sometimes when I'm bored at night after the show, I look at some of these religious programs. Have you ever seen them? They're all American.
Yeah, and I mean, they're actually the best things they do, like our mate, Pastor Burns.
Well, yeah, you can't get his over here, but you can get loads. And afterwards, yeah, but I see him more of an entertainer. Afterwards they go, so if you really want the dear Lord to pray for you, send us your dollars. Anything you can afford, and we will pray for you.
And it goes to God after expenses. Doesn't it?
Oh, dear. Anyway, Trump has said that he's going to be back in some form. That'd be interesting for America, wouldn't it? Mind you, we must remember, they're all going on about, we're going to heal America, it's all going to be great again. 70 million people, more than the entire population of this country, voted for Trump.
Well, Trump did great things. I mean, look what he did with the Middle East, and now they're going to reverse the Iran thing, and look what he did with the ripping up the climate because that wasn't working, with NATO, all these good things. And what's Obama remembered for? Nothing. And he got the Nobel Peace Prize, and Trump wasn't even talked about for that. And he's actually created peace in the Middle East.
Let's talk to Erol Morkoc, who will probably be very happy to hear you say that, who's from Republicans Overseas. Erol, good evening to you. You obviously made the right choice and left America.
Well, actually, I'm currently in California. I came back to watch the dumpster fire. So it's an entire situation. But yeah, good evening to you guys. And certainly was a day, wasn't it?
Well, honestly, I mean, it just, I don't know. I used to love going to America. I haven't been for about 20 years, I must admit. But I don't know. It's all this religious stuff and the flag waving and all the other stuff.
They've always done that. No, they've always done that.
I know, but it just gets up your nose for a while, doesn't it?
Well, it was exciting for a bit, wasn't it, with Trump?
Yeah.
Now it's got boring.
Everybody thought Trump would change it, but he obviously had enough and got very fed up. So, Errol, what's Biden going to be like? He's not going to do 4 years, is he?
Well, I mean, we assume that he could make it at least 6 to 12 months before Kamala maybe takes the reins. But, let's look at it in the most positive way, right? He is the elected president of the United States. Our party, we do have, the crazies like anybody, but the majority of the 74 plus million people who voted for Donald Trump, get behind the president. There's not this not my president out here burning down the Capitol, resistance movements being formed.
Yeah.
There's going to be definitely a few opportunities to work on things like infrastructure, something Trump would have liked to do, but the Republican establishment basically made it so he wouldn't have had that option until his second term, which unfortunately hasn't happened yet. So with the Joe Biden,
when you say yet, Errol, do you think there's still a chance?
Well, here's the thing, and I've been saying it for a few years, on the record, that, Donald Trump is an enigma in some ways. Some people read history, some people write it. He has a tendency to make it. And his, modus operandi is the rise, the fall, and the redemption. And we've had the rise, now we've had the fall. And he's falling into a quite large safety net of everything from ideological sycophants to people who just strongly believe in an America First message. And the only question is if he's going to make himself kingmaker and perhaps tap somebody like Mike Pompeo, who, steadfast Trumpian believer, or even if we could see sort of a scenario that I can't personally say I'm dreaming of, but you look at, H.W. Bush, right? And then you have the son who comes in a couple years later. In this case, more likely the daughter based on various pollable metrics. Yeah. So I do think that the Trump story isn't finished yet. And I would say that, give him 2 years out. Already populism normally runs its course after 6 years. Overstimulated economies are due for a correction around 6 years in. So in a strange sort of unintentional gamesmanship, Joe Biden could be left with an economy that just draws back reasonably, not in any sort of deprecated way, but just in a reasonable thing. It's a little bit overcooked. And Trump, 2 years down the line, he's gonna, if you saw how George W. Bush rehabilitated his image after killing 1 million people in the Middle East, or well, maybe not 1 million, maybe not directly, but you know what I mean by that. And he was able to, really rekindle who the George Bush image is. So,
why did Trump behave so badly? Why didn't he go to the inauguration and actually show he was a good loser? It's not.
Well, he's not a good loser, is he? That's why.
No, he's not. Well, it's a fair question. I think that's a fair answer. And I think it comes from sort of the way he was treated by the establishment for the years before he became president during his first campaign. He's always been the renegade, the outsider. And that's something that a lot of his supporters really liked. They didn't want to see him go in there and shake hands and join sort of the Carter, Bush, Clinton, Obama cartel that shows up every few years for a photo op somewhere. And it also proves the fact that he's not a career politician. It was a terrible political move for anybody who's in politics. That would be really detrimental.
That's a bonus,
go out there
really.
and shake hands. Yeah. Right. But instead, the way he sees it is he's not a politician. That's not even his only legacy. And he sees it as a way to go in as a fight. Now, as a Republican strategist, looking at the party, I can say, that maybe didn't ingratiate us, to let's say 10 or 15, 50 million moderates who voted for us. They might have turned them off. But, the American political cycles are pretty long, and Donald Trump does have a base, and a solid base that followed him through that entire 90 plus days of, questioning madness. And then
but it has to be him, doesn't it? He's got the charisma, not his sons, it has to be him again running.
Yeah, if you ran a campaign side by side, like arm in arm with Ivanka, I can see how you could sort of, transfer a little bit of stolen valor from there. But I think Mike Pompeo has a bigger role to play going down the line. I think a lot of people who support Trump, and I think Trump himself wouldn't be opposed to seeing that.
What do you think the Republican Party are going to do now? Are they going to try and distance themselves from Trump as much as they can?
Well, that's a great question. That's something that's going to be basically the story of the next 2 years behind the scenes in our maybe the squabbles that are going to emerge. You're going to have the old school Republicans, sort of the Lincoln Project fellows, all the way to perhaps Mitch McConnell, closer to them. You're going to have people like Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz, and then you step down into the Congress, and I mean, forgive me for saying it, but everyone in the Congress, you can have everything from Marxists to snake charmers. There's a very, very diverse group of sort of people who probably couldn't do much else. So in there, you're going to have some really bizarre people, and some people who are going to create great optical advantages for the left. For example, the BBC right now is doing some program. They're talking to me about QAnon and how QAnon is so ingratiated and deep in our party. QAnon has nothing to do with anything that we believe in. But these kind of things, it makes a good program.
Listen, Errol, have nothing to do with the BBC. Nothing to do with it at all.
But they need to keep Trump on side because he's talking of opening another party, and that'll just split the vote. It won't do any good, but it'll split the vote, won't it? So they need to keep him on side and all his 70 million supporters.
Yeah, because he would do it. He would open a Patriot Party, and I think a lot of people would say, we're willing to lose this vote if we can destroy what they view as the multi-party. They look at a Democrat-Republican oligarchy of, interchangeable people who, pander to different folks, lovable losers like Mitt Romney. And I think people were sick and tired of it. So he's got a great face for taking a...
I know loads of lovable losers.
This country loves lovable losers.
Yeah, the problem with it, the problem is if you're a little assertive, people go,
exactly.
I mean, people call me the rudest man on the radio for years. I mean, it's hurtful.
Really?
Absolutely hurtful.
His bark's worse than his bite. It's not that bad.
Just because I say somebody's an idiot because they believe that COVID is all dreamed up by the world's governments, I don't think that's very hurtful.
But what is Donald's biggest legacy now that he's gone for a bit?
His biggest legacy is going to be the one that he ran on, which was the no war president. For the first time in 50, 60 years, we reduced that. Somebody who came out and said the military-industrial complex, the last person to talk about it like that was Eisenhower on his way out in 54, 56. Yeah. And that's a big deal, man. Not bombing countries, pulling 100,000 troops in Afghanistan, now 2,500. Yeah, that's how you do it.
He even called a raid off at one point, didn't he?
Hang on, guys. Why did he execute those people? Because they're going, Biden says he's going to get rid of the death penalty, which I think is a good idea, because it sounds to me like a lot of people who get executed are mentally ill. And it just, it doesn't really do any good.
Yeah, I actually, on a personal note, really agree with you. If you look at how, the death penalty in California, for example, from arrest to execution costs $250 million. It's in every way, from if you want to be heartless and conservative on the numbers or, morally on the right side, it's an issue. But also that's something that's an American thing. The death penalty hasn't gone through that transformation as it has, especially in Europe. And so, you have a lot of strong conservative forces who have said that, keep in mind, one of the women who was, these are people who've done heinous crimes who were executed in the last few days, like people who could burn their babies, drown their babies, killed their own families. It wasn't as though, it was
that's
good
not
people.
normal. That means you're mentally ill, Surely, Errol. I mean,
There was that
means you-
woman who they killed who hadn't been, they hadn't executed one for years, and she'd been abused her whole life.
No, look, I'm with you guys. And I think that speaks to more of the older traditional Republican conservatives who were very strong on the death penalty, being, like the guys who were the Nixonian anti-pot, put people in jail for 10 years for, well, I guess that was Joe Biden.
But why did he rush it through after he lost the election? What's the point?
I think that was on the back end. Whatever the forces behind the curtain in the Republican Party said, this is something that we pull it across, just like the pardons and stuff. It comes across as 0 hour. I can't say that I morally or personally agree with the death penalty, but I do at least can imagine how that occurred.
Yeah.
And this pardoning some people who are pretty appalling, I mean, this seems a bit silly as well.
Yeah.
Well, but see, that's
We
the
don't have
purview
that,
of the
do we?
American president, right? Well, George.
That comes from this
Clinton
country,
pardoned
actually.
his brother.
It comes
Does
from
it?
this
It does.
country.
It comes from the monarchy. Yeah,
the monarchy. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have
Yeah,
the monarchy in charge anymore. We left that.
But when
behind.
they beat us in the war
I love
of
the monarchy,
independence,
by the way.
they gave that power to the president. But he didn't free Tiger Joe, did he?
Yeah, I did.
No, sadly, Joe Exotic wasn't qualified. Well, here's the thing: you can use it pretty gratuitously for white collar offenses, but for attempted murder or murder for hire or actual gratuitous crimes, I couldn't point to one time. It's usually insider traders and political favors. I mean, again, Bill Clinton's brother. He did something silly, nothing like heavy. So usually it's granted on those terms.
So did
but yeah, it is
Joe
odd
Exotic
looking outside
never
it.
get out then?
No, he's still there, isn't he? Yeah.
No,
good.
he's got a 22 years.
And he
good,
didn't
good,
pardon
good.
himself, Trump, did he? Because if you do that, you're sort of admitting guilt, so you could open yourself up to it. Yeah.
But I'll give you this: there's nothing in that rule that says he has to reveal that he's given a pardon. So he can do what's called a pocket pardon. He could have written pardons for him and his family and everybody, not revealed it, put it in his pocket, and 4 years later they say, all right, I'm not saying he did this.
But they'd find out. You'd find out, wouldn't you? So
Well,
you'd
no,
think
no,
it would
he-
come out.
it would come out.
But it's one of those things that he could just write and put it in his pocket and tell nobody.
No, but I mean,
know?
they'd find out because there wouldn't be a case, and then he could open himself up to civil work court.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what.
Yeah,
Listen,
they
I'll
can
tell you
take
the
a civil
high.
court, yeah.
The high spots were Lady Gaga, Jennifer Lopez, and Amanda Gorman.
Can we
who
hear
is
some of the songs that they sang?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, Amanda Gorman, who turn that. I've got the harp playing again. Amanda Gorman, who is the poet laureate.
Oh,
Also,
okay.
Nick
Yeah, I
Nick
saw-
from
I
us.
saw
Yeah,
that.
she was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was positive. I saw Lady Gaga at Coachella a couple of years ago. She was great. So
Can't you come up with your own ideas? I mean, impeachment we invented, and all these things that we invented.
yeah.
You've nicked our
Yeah, it's gonna
traditions.
be.
You threw
It's
our tea.
gonna all come around, right?
Everything comes around again.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there we go. Listen, Errol, we've got to go. Thank you very much indeed. We'll talk again. I think in a couple of months we'll know more about what's happening. But for the moment, thank you very much indeed. Erol Morkoc, Republican overseas. What? Did you want to say something?
No,
Are you absolutely sure?
I'm all right, man.
Good. We'll take a break.